really what you're seeing now, like with the hypocrisy of, like Apple, like criticizing Elon Musk and Twitter and all this, but at the same time, they're helping the CCP suppress protesters.
Not that Elon Musk has clean hands when it comes to the CCP.
Definitely true.
But yeah, the Apple airdrop thing was kind of disgusting.
They did the same thing to the Hong Kong protesters too. There was, an app that helped people like identify where the police were, and then Apple removed it from the App Store.
Yeah, because it was violating
terms and conditions, and that the airdrop thing. Just explain that because you didn't.
Oh, that they basically disabled mass airdrop sharing for a certain amount of time because people, like, I forget, it was like 10 minutes or something like that. Like because people during the protests were spreading the protests by just like airdropping everybody within a certain, as far as the geographic radius could go. Because then you could, we experienced this in Hong Kong too. Remember where we would occasionally just like get airdrops randomly get airdrops of like there's going to be a protest on this date and time, or like some kind of document of grievances or something like that. And so that was happening in China, and so Apple basically disabled that ability.
Yeah. So really, like the story of Jiang Zemin and the CCP broadly is like this oligarchy in the West and in China becoming very rich and powerful, and everyone else getting completely screwed. I mean, the gutting of American manufacturing, the fact that, Michigan auto workers were suddenly competing against slave labor in Shenzhen.
I mean, people don't even know about this, I think, a lot in China, but there were riots in the countryside in the 90s under Jiang because of the income inequality issues.
Yeah. Oh, and then there was also like that blood transfusion scheme that got everyone AIDS.
In Henan. Well, yeah. Yes.
Lots of bad things happened under Jiang.
That wasn't Jiang specifically.
Yeah, I'm just remembering like there's just so much horrible things that have always happened under the Chinese Communist Party rule. I mean, again, like I think it is interesting that poor schizophrenic Kanye West had his insanity, and like people are like, oh, what a monster talking about the Nazis like that. Well, as we're currently, so many politicians and institutions and businesses are just happily in bed with the Chinese Communist Party. And it's like, never again actually just kept happening.
Well, but the difference now is that we can make money in China, Chris.
Actually, I want to talk about the corruption, if that's okay.
Sure.
That under Jiang, I think, because that is something that a lot of people don't realize.
Oh, yeah, I get where you're going.
Yeah, that part of the whole thing with China going to the WTO and all of a sudden, all this like foreign direct investment coming into China, like all this foreign money going in. Jiang, basically, because he had no good power base at the time, he essentially stayed in power.
Just to expand on that, he didn't really have a good power base because he wasn't supposed to be the leader of China.
Yeah.
Like he was kind of in Shanghai. He didn't have power in Beijing. He was just sort of like this compromise between these different factions in the Communist Party to be like.
And he jumped up too fast, essentially, before building a power base.
He was a little too young, too naive.
Not very simple guy, though. Pretty conniving, actually. But he essentially, the two things he did to build a power base was, one, he started the persecution of Falun Gong, which meant that he could promote people, establish this nationwide super security state, and then promote his people to be in charge of it and build a power base that way. And the other thing he did was he allowed rampant corruption to happen in the CCP. Like under Mao, even under Deng, there wasn't enough money coming into China for like CCP officials in general, both low-level officials and high-level officials, to like make it rich, to be really corrupt, right? Under Jiang, like all this Western money is being pumped in, CCP officials, their family members, they really cashed in.
Yeah.
So when we talk about like all the corruption and like, these CCP officials being found with like gold bars in their homes, or like 100 mistresses, or like all of these crazy stories, this is possible because Jiang fostered this culture of corruption so that he could maintain power within the CCP.
Which is why Xi Jinping was able to use an anti-corruption campaign to go after his political rivals tied to Jiang, because they were objectively very, very corrupt.
Yeah. I want to add something to what you said about the corruption, because you mentioned that Jiang had created this sort of security state. And he had created what's called the 610 office on June 10th, I guess, 1999, to be this organization, this Gestapo. And like, it came at a time where like the 80s and the 90s to some degree were a time where a lot of people in China thought that there could be reforms and move towards more of a rules-based, law-based system. But the creation of the 610 office, which in and of itself was outside the government's control.
I mean, the Tiananmen Square massacre was also like the end to the idea that there would be political reform.
Yes, but I think the impact of having the 610 office is not to be understated, because when you create an organization that is specifically outside the purview of government and has enormous power, then you're creating a system that is meant to be outside the rule of law. And then when you start giving it lots of power to persecute people who haven't committed anything that would have been actually considered a crime under a normal rule of law system, then you just start moving further and further away from that government's ability to have rule of law. Like if you say, okay, well, the Constitution guarantees freedom of religion, and then you go after someone for practicing their religion using this extra legal organization that really in reality has the authority to do that, then there's basically no way to move towards a proper legal system. And in fact, as time goes on, the very existence of this moves the entire country further and further away from any kind of proper legal system. And so I would say the impact of Jiang Zemin using this to build his own power base with this security system is like the impact directly made it harder and harder and now impossible for the Communist Party to ever have rule of law. I just think that's a legacy of Jiang Zemin, where a different leader could have possibly moved things in a different direction. He specifically moved them away from a legal system. That's what I have to say.
Well, I mean, definitely it's clear that the Communist Party controls society and the government is just sort of an appendage it uses.
Yeah, I mean, lots of stuff in China sits outside of the government. Like the military is a Communist Party branch. It's not part of the government.
How Jiang started the whole like strengthening the military thing too in the 90s.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see what you mean though, because China didn't really have a legal system in some ways until the 80s. Mm-hmm. They started to be like, oh crap, we need to start developing this actual system.
Right. And then lawyers like Gao Zhisheng and Chen Guangcheng were like inspired by this idea that, maybe we can help, build the legal system if we become lawyers.
Yeah, the barefoot lawyer thing, which is kind of a reference to the idea of barefoot doctors going around spreading medicine.
Yeah. And it worked for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Until they started challenging the CCP.
Yeah, that's the problem with the rule of law. It means even the government and officials have to abide by the law.
Yeah, so I think that is a good point, Matt. That
thank you, Shelley.
The legal system is getting further and further away from what it could have been, right. And also because the 80s were that whole a lot of things were beginning to get more open because Mao had died, and now right. There was the possibility that the CCP could have gone down a different route than it did.
Right, like look at Hong Kong in the last 2 years. The CCP has started to infiltrate Hong Kong's legal system, and now Hong Kong's legal system is basically gone forever because they're now using rules from the Hong Kong national security law, like subversion of state power, collusion with foreign forces, and so on, essentially to persecute political dissidents in Hong Kong. And once those things are actually once they've begun to happen, like once you're able to lock up people like Jimmy Lai and lock up people like Joshua Wong and so on, who never committed real crimes, they've only committed political crimes, then good people who want to be in that legal system no longer want to be part of it because they know that they're going to be overruled or they themselves could be persecuted for trying to be fair and just. And so very quickly, we've seen Hong Kong's legal system get corrupted by this Communist Party mentality.